Hello everybody, my name is Caitlin and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things horror, and today I'm giving my review of the new M. Night Shyamalan movie, Knock at the Cabin. I was lucky enough to go to an advanced screening of this last night. There's like construction that's going on outside, so I apologize if you hear any weird noises throughout this video. This is going to be a spoiler-free review. To be honest, I don't have much to say about this movie. Overall, I thought this movie was okay. Knock at the Cabin is probably one of M. Night's best movies within the last few years, but I wasn't wowed by it. I left the theater just kind of being, nah. Knock at the Cabin is based off of the book, The Cabin at the End of the World, I believe it's called, by author Paul Tremblay. It follows this family who is on vacation at the classic cabin in the woods. And as always happens in these type of movies, when you're out in the middle of nowhere in a cabin, people are gonna show up and try to ruin your life. The family is visited by this group of 4 people led by Dave Bautista, and they basically hold the family hostage and tell them that they have to make a very hard, difficult decision. And if they don't make that decision, then the world is going to end within a matter of like 24 hours. The strongest aspect of this film is definitely the ensemble cast. All of the actors do a great job, with Dave Bautista particularly being the standout here. From a technical aspect, I think this is one of M. Night's best films. I loved a lot of the shots that he came up with, especially at the beginning of the film when he's starting to build that tension and you're starting to learn what's really happening. The action starts fairly quickly after that. It does not take a lot of time to set itself up, which I also enjoyed. Unfortunately, I felt like he got a little safer with the camera setups towards the end of the film. I felt like the beginning of the film, he was being more creative, being a bit more experimental, and then there wasn't really anything to stand out in the third act. And that's really my biggest critique of this film. I was enjoying it enough for the first 2/3 of the movie, and then you get into that third act, and that's where it wasn't quite working for me. I should say I have not read the book that this film is based on. There were people at the screening last night that had read the book, and what I was hearing from them is that the book is unsurprisingly much better than the film. I guess the film does change the ending to the book, which makes sense because, again, I felt like the first 2/3 were the strongest, and I guess that is the part that M. Night followed the book pretty closely. And then he does something completely different for the third act, and it felt a little disjointed, what was happening in the first 2/3 and then what happens at the end. Like, tonally, there was just something different there. The first half of the film does a really great job of keeping you guessing, right? You want to know what is happening here. Who are these people? Is this all just some giant hoax that they came up with? Are they having some sort of psychotic break? And of course, because it's an M. Night film, you're constantly sitting there waiting for the big twist. What is going to be the big reveal? All I will say is that the ending is not what I thought it was going to be. And again, not my favorite part of the film, which feels pretty normal for an M. Night movie. I could see some viewers really liking the ending that he goes with and finding it very satisfying. For me, I just thought he could have done something maybe a little bit more interesting. There are also some story choices here and there that I wasn't that big of a fan of. There are times throughout the film where he'll cut back to a flashback to try to give you a little bit more background on the protagonists. And I'm not a fan of flashbacks in general. I find it to be kind of lazy writing. And with the flashbacks in this film, you could tell that these scenes were probably more fleshed out in the book. In the book, they're probably longer. They probably go into more detail, obviously more detail than you're able to provide in an hour and 40-minute film. But I felt like when the flashbacks did happen, they were kind of at random moments and they were very brief. They only gave you very quick snippets of the characters' lives before this incident. And I wasn't always quite sure how what was happening in the flashbacks connected to what the characters were going through in the cabin. Like, I get that it's setting up the relationship between the 2 husbands, but again, it's so quick and it doesn't really give you that much new information about them or their relationship or their personalities. So I feel like they didn't really need to be in there. Or if he did want to include them, I wish M. Night had just expanded them a little bit, had given us a little bit more new information. There's also these like news reports that they show on the TV throughout the film of all these kind of disasters that are happening in the world. And some of these moments just have really not great CGI. So there are other moments where the film would set you up for something, right? You would have a character that would notice something or have some sort of revelation. And these feel like they're gonna be big setups to pay off to this grand finale, but they're really not. They're really only set up so that the characters can then go into an exposition dump. So I just felt like the film didn't quite tie everything together. I left the movie with a pretty good idea of what I think M. Night wanted to say with this film. However, I wish the theme had been a little bit clearer and had been expressed in a more visually interesting way rather than just having characters saying it through dialogue. I will also say that this is not a horror film, really. I know that the book is very much a horror text, and if I had to guess, I'm sure the book is probably a lot darker and grittier than the film. But this is an M. Night movie, so a lot of the violence, a lot of the killing and gore happens off screen. So if you're a horror fan that goes into these movies looking for the gore and the blood, you're not gonna have much of that here. So overall, I don't know if I would necessarily recommend you run out to the theater and see this movie. If you are interested, I would say go see it as a matinee. If you're not a big fan of M. Night's movies, or you want your horror films to have a little bit more bite to it, then I would say probably wait for this film to come out on streaming. I'm sure it will be available on HBO Max within the next couple of weeks. So those are my brief thoughts on Knock at the Cabin. Are you gonna see this movie? If you've seen it already, what did you think about it? Let me know, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.